Let me open this up now to the audience and see if there are questions from the floor.
Hi, thank you. Very nice panel. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Sheldon, on the digital technology, or if anyone would like to comment, I have been involved in digital technology for 17 years now, and we feel we're in a mature market, but what's happening, I see, and I'd like to have your input on this, is that this digital world is now combining what we used to have siloed positions with siloed technology, and it's now interconnecting. And I think that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a lot of hesitancy to adopt this type of solution. So you had reservoir staying in reservoir, and you had flow assurance talking only to flow assurance, and then artificial lift, and et cetera. And now you can actually see from point to end point with one solution. But there's hesitancy from the user base because they weren't trained, they weren't educated, they still like Excel spreadsheets. Are we at the inflection point?
That's a great question. I don't know if we're at the inflection point. And I go back to my past, and almost word for word, that's a question I've heard before. But it was specific to subsurface domain only, and specifically around geology and geophysics. And as I alluded to earlier, I think it's a matter of that platform exists, but it's an expectation. It becomes table stakes for all of us. So if you're a reservoir engineer, you have a best of breed tool you're used to using and how you work, whatever that tool may be. Same with if you're a production engineer, same with if you're a geophysicist. And so the ability for that technology to talk, and this isn't a new concept obviously, is just table stakes, not just for E&P companies, but for the service side as well, for the software and technology providers. And it might be an inflection point, but if it is, I think it's just because of expectations and no other reason than that. The technology's there. Whether or not the technology providers see the impetus to make it happen, and in some cases it's already happening, in some cases it isn't, depends on what part of the upstream industry we're talking about. Some are more connected than others. So again, is the impetus there for the technology provider to do that? I would say yes, it is. Hope that answers your question. Sort of? Mm-hmm.
Great discussion. This question is for Allie. I would like your perspective from Equinor being innovation in energy transition for a long period of time. At least I believe we went too aggressive on energy transition investments in the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. But recently we have seen kind of a shift again. For example, take BP. They announced that they're going to come out of oil and gas, but then they announced that they're investing $1 billion more per year in the next 10 years, kind of a reversal. Did we go too aggressive, or we are at a pivot point right now? What's your opinion?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think from our perspective, and actually a couple of my colleagues and I were chatting about this earlier, and in the exact same with the BP perspective. I think at the time when certain companies were taking different positions, it may have been seen that our position wasn't strong enough, right? But we still held on to, the 3 pillars. When our new CEO came in, and we were, kind of rebranding post-COVID, still kept a very strong position on needing an optimized oil and gas portfolio. So, now this year, our last capital market updates, really not a lot of big changes. So we've been able to kind of stay that course. So, where we may have gotten some pushback earlier that, maybe we weren't aggressive enough in transitioning, I think we see that it was the right approach, and we're not having to make huge swings right now. One of the things, I think a lot of companies do this, is, we publish our energy perspectives. I've done this for 12 years now, and every year it's updated. And that's basically kind of our roadmap, looking at what we think the world's going to look like between now and 2050 in different scenarios. And then given that we don't control exactly what happens, we're one company, but with what we can see as the possibilities, how are we best placed to be able to provide energy for people and progress for society? So that kind of becomes a little bit of our roadmap.
Thank you.
Mauricio Ramirez with Man Energy Solutions. I think you all talked a little bit about the energy transition, and I wanted to ask any opinions on the role of energy storage, that energy storage plays, and the impact that it will have for any of the panelists.
I can say a little bit. I mean, it's certainly not my area of expertise, but it is, I mean, obviously we see it as a role that it has to play. And, looking at research, I mean, we also have our Equinor Ventures that I think even in the U.S. we've spent about $60 million, towards different startups in these different spaces. And that's one of the space globally I know we have invested in. So we certainly see it has a role. I mentioned the energy perspectives. It's on our Equinor site, so feel free to read that, and it'll provide more context.
So I address that a little. Again, nowhere near my area of expertise either, but there's, relative to some other aspects of energy transition, energy storage, really important, but probably the level of investment that's gone into it is low relative to other aspects. But it's a complex piece, right? It depends on what type of energy storage you're talking about. So I'm sure we'll see dramatic increases in investment in technology relative to energy storage, depending on the type of storage and what the application is, where it's located geographically, et cetera. But it's not something we're actively pursuing at the moment. It doesn't mean we won't.